Can you believe that one of the most famous Christmas images in the world, the jolly red suited Santa Claus with those rosy red cheeks and round belly, wasn't actually invented by Coca Cola? Even though almost everyone has heard the claim that Coca Cola invented this version of Santa Claus, the truth is a little bit more complicated and interesting. The story of how the modern Santa came to be mixes folklore, art, history, and clever advertising. Let's take a deep dive through the cultural evolution of Santa Claus. Long before Coca Cola ever put Santa in an ad, the idea of St. Nicholas had already traveled across continents and centuries. In medieval times in Europe, he was depicted as a slender bishop in robes, carrying a staff and performing miracles or acts of kindness. When Dutch settlers brought this idea over to America in the 17th century, the figure continued to evolve. But the real turning point came in the early 1800s when writers and illustrators in the United States began reshaping him into something new, something unique, something more magical, and also something more commercially appealing. These stories were what began to shape St. Nicholas into Santa Claus we know today. Like that of Washington Irving, the early American author, described a pipe smoking, sleigh riding St. Nicholas in 1809. Then came Clement Clarke Moore's a famous poem, A Visit from St. Nicholas, better known as "'Twas the Night Before Christmas" in 1823, which introduced major Santa staples like the flying reindeer, the chimney entrance, sack of toys, and the jolly personality. This poem helped take Santa from a religious icon to a cozy, more human like form. He was whimsical around children and the face and the name that everyone would know and recognize. But he still didn't have that standard look. Throughout the 1800s, artists experimented wildly with the idea of Santa. Everything from tall to thin, to heavy set, to mischievous looking, to unique looking, from tan suits to gray suits to even green. He wore it all and he looked all different ways. Sometimes he looked like a woodsman, other times he looked like a magical gnome. His shape, size, and outfits were up to interpretation. Then came Thomas Nast. Nast, a famous political cartoonist in the late 19th century, created dozens of illustrations of Santa for Harper's Weekly. He gradually shaped Santa into a rounder, friendlier, and more kind looking figure. He had a bushy beard. Nast would even place Santa in the North Pole in one of his illustrations, and the idea would stick permanently within pop culture. But even Nast's Santa varied from drawing to drawing. The red suit appeared occasionally, but it wasn't a defining feature yet. By the early 20th century, things started to get more standardized for Santa. He was more recognized, but he would still be inconsistently portrayed. Artists used all sorts of colors to depict him in different advertisements, magazines, and shows. And Christmas cards would even not have a standardized Santa. He was familiar, but not something everyone knew. That's when Coca Cola came in. They entered the story in 1931 when they hired Hayden Sundblom to create a series of holiday advertisements featuring Santa Claus. They wanted to make their winter advertising more appealing and friendly. Coke had been trying to promote itself as a year round beverage because at the time, people were not drinking soda during those winter months. So they needed a way to continue sales throughout the year through unique advertising. They would create a Santa that felt warm, human, approachable, cheerful, and have a standardized look. And he would always be reaching for that iconic Coca-Cola, inspired partly by Moore's poem and partly by a real retired salesman he used as the model. The design of Santa, who looked unmistakably alive and joyful, came to life. He gave him the bright red suit we know today with the white fur around it. He even produced the large belly, expressive eyes, rosy cheeks, and everything else you needed to have the iconic Santa Claus. And of course, again, he always had his bottle of Coca-Cola. When these ads first appeared, they were an instant hit. For 3 decades, Coca-Cola ran these Santa illustrations every single year, and they would be reprinted in magazines, billboards, posters, and store displays. Families across America began to associate Coca Cola with Christmas. It was no longer just a refreshment, it was a year round beverage that created magic and love for families. A single idea of standardizing Santa Claus helped rebrand Coca Cola into the beverage we know today. And it wasn't just Coca Cola that invented the suit and the warm feeling that we saw with Santa Claus, but Coca Cola was the one who stayed visually consistent and would globally distribute this appealing image throughout the world. And this is what was important. Before this, many people had different interpretations of Santa Claus, but Coca Cola standardized it, and this became the major cultural force behind the Santa we know today. Coca Cola's influence went beyond just advertising, they became Americana themselves. With creating this unique looking Santa Claus, this Americanized Santa Claus, it wasn't about just selling soda, it wasn't about selling advertising, it wasn't about producing more revenue for the company. It was about creating a cozy Christmas American feeling all throughout the year. There'd be countless parodies, TV shows, merchandising, all reinforcing the presence of this imaginative Santa Claus. What are your thoughts about Santa Claus and Coca Cola? Do you find the concept of Santa Claus coming from Coca Cola? Or do you envision Santa as somebody else, somebody different? Let us know in the comments below. We'd love to hear from all of you. Thank you.